My name is Claire Whitman, 27 years old. And yesterday, my parents showed me exactly what family meant to them. It wasn't love. It wasn't care. It was a demand, signed, sealed, delivered like a threat. I just landed the job people dream of $650,000 a year. Years of grinding, studying through sleepless nights, clawing my way through internships no one else wanted. And instead of pride, instead of "we're so proud of you," my mother spat greed in my face. 50% for us, 30% for your sister. No excuses. My father didn't blink. He just added the final knife. You'll do this without questions or get out of our lives. That's the moment something snapped. I smiled, silent, while my chest burned. Then, in the quietest voice I've ever heard myself speak, I said, "Of course." And by that afternoon, every drawer in my apartment was empty. Every bill they had tied to my account?
Cut.
Every luxury they paraded as their own?
Gone.
I locked my new place by the ocean, breathed in freedom, and knew the war had only just begun. Because you see, what happens when the family who tried to own you suddenly realizes you've disappeared from their lease? What happens when the hands that fed them vanish overnight? The answer came sooner than I thought. And it didn't come quietly. The first call came at 6:07 a.m. It was my mother, her voice shrill, trembling with outrage. "Claire, the mortgage company just called. They said the payment bounced. You need to fix this right now." I sat on my balcony, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise melt gold over the water. I didn't answer. By noon, my father's name lit up my phone. Voicemail after voicemail, each one louder, angrier. "Do you think you can embarrass us like this? Your mother's having a breakdown. Your sister has modeling expenses. You owe us. We made you. Without us, you're nothing." But the thing about threats? They lose power once you stop being afraid. That evening, a message from my sister came through, syrupy sweet at first, then bitter when I didn't reply. "You're selfish. Do you know how many sacrifices I made for you? You're going to regret this. Everyone's already talking about what a cold-hearted monster you are." Monster.
Funny, isn't it?
When I was paying their bills, funding their parties, and keeping their lights on, I was their golden daughter. The second I pulled the plug, I became the villain. But villains have something my family never understood: control. And I wasn't done yet. Because they had built their entire lives on my income. Their friends, their reputation, their status. Every bit of it borrowed from my success. Now, one by one, those pillars were about to crumble. And when they did, they would learn the truth they'd buried for years. The daughter they called nothing had become everything they needed. By the third day, the calls weren't just coming from them anymore. It was the bank manager, the country club secretary, even their church treasurer. Each voicemail was the same melody, embarrassment wrapped in urgency. "Mr. and Mrs. Whitman, your membership dues are 3 months overdue. The credit card tied to your daughter's account has been declined. The utilities will be shut off by Friday." I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Because while my father once boasted at dinner parties, "Our Claire takes care of everything. She's the pride of this family," now, those same people whispered about how quickly the Whitmans had fallen. My mother tried to spin it, of course. She called me, her voice dripping with practiced charm. "Sweetheart, you know we only pushed you because we love you. Your sister's dreams matter too. Just a little help so people don't misunderstand." But beneath the gloss, I heard it. Desperation. That night, I opened the financial folder I'd kept hidden. Every transfer, every payment, every indulgence they'd passed off as family necessities. Designer handbags, trips to Maui, car payments for my sister's BMW. All charged to me. I stared at the numbers, my chest heavy with years of betrayal. And then, with one click, I forwarded the entire file. To the mortgage company. To the credit bureau. To their so-called friends. Not out of cruelty. Out of clarity. If they wanted me to be their provider, their safety net, their scapegoat, then they could finally see what they had turned me into. The mask was cracking. And tomorrow, the entire facade would shatter. It happened at the charity gala. The same event where my parents strutted every year in glittering gowns and tailored suits, parading me around like a trophy they had raised. This time, they walked in alone. My sister clung to their arms, but the whispers started before they'd even reached the champagne table. Didn't Claire use to cover their donations? Strange. I heard the Whitmans' checks bounce last month. Imagine living in that mansion and not being able to keep the lights on. My mother's smile strained like glass about to crack. My father tried to laugh it off, booming about temporary glitches. But the more they laughed, the louder the room seemed to hum against them. And then came the moment that sealed it. The auctioneer stepped onto the stage, announcing a pledged tier of $50,000 for children's hospitals. My father lifted his hand automatically, until the auctioneer's assistant leaned down and whispered something. "Sir, I'm afraid your account no longer qualifies." The microphone wasn't muted. The room froze. Every eye turned to them. I watched from the back, unseen, a soft smile tugging my lips. For years, they had used me to buy their image of wealth, generosity, and power. Without me, they were nothing but smoke and mirrors. My sister tried to salvage it, muttering about how Claire would step in. But the truth had already spilled across the marble floors. The Whitmans weren't benefactors. They were beggars dressed in silk. And as their faces burned red, I realized something delicious. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. And it was only just beginning. The pounding on my door started just after midnight. 3 sharp fists, frantic, like the house itself might cave in if I didn't answer. Through the peephole, I saw them. My mother in her pearls, her mascara smudged like war paint, my father's jaw trembling though he tried to look defiant. My sister stood behind them, arms crossed, eyes darting like she'd been dragged there against her will. "Claire," my mother cried, voice cracking. Please open the door. You don't understand. We're losing everything." I stayed silent, letting the night stretch long. Then my father's voice, lower, harsher. "You're our daughter. This is your duty. You don't get to abandon us. UOWES." That word, oh. It was the same word he used when he took my savings account in college to fix the roof. When Mom emptied my emergency fund to cover my sister's tuition after she dropped out for the 3rd time. When they told me my promotions and my exhaustion didn't matter because family comes first, but only when it meant them. Finally, I opened the door just a crack. Just enough for them to see my face in the golden light. "No," I whispered, calm as ice. "I don't owe you. You took everything I gave, and you buried me in debt that was never mine. And now you want more? I'm not your bank. I'm not your lifeline. I'm not your scapegoat." My mother's lips trembled. My father's fists clenched. And then, quietly, I closed the door. The lock clicked. The silence that followed was louder than any scream. But in that silence I knew, tomorrow, they'd crawl lower than they ever had before. And I was ready. By morning, the headlines were already out. Whitman's default on pledges. Local power couple exposed as fraud. Daughter distances herself amid scandal. I didn't leak anything. I didn't have to. When you build your empire on borrowed money and borrowed pride, the cracks eventually scream louder than the walls. At the office, colleagues stopped by my desk, whispering. Not about me, but about them. "Did you see the news?" I always wondered how they managed those donations. "Claire, you must be humiliated." But I wasn't. For the first time in my life, I felt weightless. By noon, my phone lit up again. Not just with calls. With pleas. Texts from my sister. "Claire, can you just cover one payment, please? I'll pay you back this time. Mom hasn't eaten since yesterday. Dad says he'll apologize." That last one almost made me laugh. Apologize? After years of telling me my worth was tied to how much I handed over? After demanding slices of my salary before I could even cash the check? I didn't respond. By evening, they showed up again. Not at my home this time, but at the gates of my office tower. Disheveled. Small. Reporters caught the whole scene, my mother gripping the bars, my father shouting my name, my sister hiding her face. And there I was, stepping into the lobby in a tailored suit, pausing just long enough for the cameras to catch me looking at them. No pity, no anger, just distance. I walked away, each step echoing like a verdict. And in that moment I realized their collapse wasn't my revenge. It was their own doing. But the final act? That was mine to deliver. That night, a letter slid under my door. Handwritten. The script was shaky, ink smudged. My father's voice came alive in the lines. Claire, we were wrong. We see it now. Please, just one chance. We have nothing left. No home, no credit, no dignity. Your mother can't sleep. Your sister cries all day. If there's a shred of love left in you, meet us tomorrow. We'll explain. For a moment, I stood frozen. Once upon a time, I would have sprinted to them. I would have begged to make things right, even when I was the one bleeding. But those days were gone. Still, I went, not to save them, but to end it. We met at a cheap diner off the highway, far from the places they once flaunted. The smell of burnt coffee clung to the air. They sat in a cracked booth, smaller than I'd ever seen them. My mother's pearls were gone. My father's jacket frayed at the cuffs. My sister's mascara streaked her cheeks. They looked ordinary, almost human. Claire, my mother whispered, voice stripped of venom. Please, just help us back on our feet. One loan, one deposit. We'll pay you back. I stirred my coffee slowly, the clink of the spoon slicing the silence. You used to laugh at me, I said softly. Called me weak. Called me worthless. And now you want me to carry you again? My father reached across the table, desperate. We'll do better this time. We'll change. I pulled my hand back.
Come.
Final. No, I said. I've already paid more than anyone should. Their faces fell, collapsing like paper castles in the rain. I stood, left a few bills for the coffee, and walked out. Behind me, I heard nothing. No screams. No threats. Just the quiet sound of their defeat. And I knew the next step was mine alone, the closing of the circle. The ocean stretched wide outside my window, waves rolling and steady, calm. My new home was quiet. No slammed doors, no demands, no voices slicing me open. Just silence, warm and alive. I thought about that diner. Their faces. The way my mother's eyes begged, the way my father's pride cracked, the way my sister crumbled when the mirror of their own cruelty was finally turned on them. They thought money made them untouchable. They thought I was the weak link, the one they could control, cut, bleed dry. But the truth? The more they took, the stronger I became, until I had nothing left to give, except myself. And that was enough. I poured my energy into what they never valued, my work, my peace, my chosen family. Friends who loved me not for what I handed over, but for who I was. Late nights filled with laughter instead of shame. Mornings where the only expectation was coffee and sunlight. My parents and sister? They found a cramped rental on the edge of town. No more charity galas, no more designer gowns, no more headlines praising their philanthropy. People whispered now, not about me, but about how quickly their empire turned to dust. And I didn't gloat. I didn't seek revenge in fire or fury. My revenge was simpler, a life untouched by their shadows. As I closed the balcony doors, a final thought lingered, poetic, sharp, true. They demanded half of my world. In the end, I gave them nothing. And nothing is exactly what they became. They handed me a takeout menu while everyone else was clinking champagne glasses over foie gras and prime rib. I looked down at the wrinkled paper in my hand, and then up at the long, camellit table where my siblings laughed like they were royalty. My name is Vanessa, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt like your own family wanted to shrink you down so small you'd vanish without protest? The waiter stood by awkwardly, waiting for my order. Mom didn't even look up. She was too busy talking to my sister about her new law internship. My brother grinned and whispered, "They didn't think you'd want to sit with everyone, since you're always so sensitive." Sensitive. That word again. their weapon of choice whenever they needed to silence me. I glanced at the empty chair at the far end of the table, the one they never intended me to fill. I'd paid the deposit for this reservation. I'd spent 3 hours securing the private room at Delacroix's. I'd even requested the wine pairing that my dad loved. And yet here I was, given a takeout menu like I was a delivery driver who wandered in. I smiled. Then, quietly, I walked to the end of the table and picked up the reservation confirmation folder I had left with the maitre d'. The one with my name, my card, my contact info. Their laughter paused for the first time. I turned to the waiter and said in a calm, clear voice, "Put the whole table's order on my father's tab. The one ending in 4398. It's all in the system. Just transfer the charges." The waiter hesitated, then nodded. I folded the takeout menu and placed it right in front of my mom's untouched appetizer plate. No one said a word. I walked out before dessert. But I stayed just close enough to hear what happened 20 minutes later, when the bill came and my father shouted across the room, $1,900? What did you order?" That's when the table turned quiet, because they finally realized I hadn't left empty-handed. I had left them holding the mask they'd always worn and the bill they thought I'd keep paying. When I got home that night, I didn't cry. I sat on my porch, poured myself a glass of ginger ale, and stared at the stars like they owed me an explanation. The kind of silence that settles after betrayal isn't peaceful. It scratches at your ribs from the inside out. Because this wasn't about dinner. It never was. It was about every moment leading up to that night. 1,000 paper cuts dressed as jokes, as we didn't mean it like that, as you know how you are. They erased me long before that menu was handed to me. When my sister got into Yale, they threw a garden party with a violinist and a customized cake that said, "Our future senator." When I got promoted to manager after working 60-hour weeks, my mom texted, "That's nice. Just don't overdo it. You're not really leadership material, remember?" I remembered. I remembered how they'd always seat me closest to the kitchen during holidays, said it was so I could help serve faster. I remembered being 13 and overhearing my aunt say, "Vanessa's sweet, but she's not exceptional like the others." And no one corrected her. And yet, I kept showing up, kept contributing, paid for Dad's dental surgery, loaned my brother $5,000 when his crypto tanked, covered the hotel bill for Mom's birthday in Charleston. Never once asked for repayment. I thought maybe love would be enough to make them see me. But love without respect? That's just self-erasure. A slow vanishing act. And I was done performing. The next morning, my mom called. Not to apologize. Of course not. She said, "We noticed you left early. You know, it really upset your father when you made a scene." I laughed, just once. Then I asked, "What part upset him, Mom?" That I didn't want a takeout seat at a dinner I booked, or that the waiter brought him the truth with a side of tax and tip? She hung up. It was the cleanest goodbye I'd ever received. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the end of the version where I begged for a seat at their table. Because now, I was building a new one. 3 days passed. Silence. No calls. No texts. Just a photo my sister posted, her and my mom at a brunch spot, captioned, "Nothing like family who lifts you up." I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because it hurt, but because it confirmed something I'd refused to admit. They didn't just forget me. They enjoyed forgetting me. But the final straw wasn't that dinner. It wasn't the takeout menu or the fake concern afterward. It was what came next. That Friday, I got an email from my bank. Subject: Joint credit card purchase flagged for review. I hadn't used that card in months. It was the one I opened during Dad's recovery when he needed help covering prescriptions. I'd forgotten it even existed. Inside the email, a $2,400 charge to a boutique furniture store. Billing address, my parents' home. I called the bank immediately. "Sorry," the agent said. "Only the primary holder can dispute this." I paused. "You're telling me I'm the secondary holder?" "Yes, ma'am. The card's primary name is Mr. Daniel Green." My own father had flipped the account details. He'd made himself the owner, using my credit, and I hadn't even noticed. I hung up, shaking. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was theft dressed in fatherly entitlement. I texted him one sentence. You have 24 hours to remove your name and clear the balance. No reply. By noon the next day, the balance remained. But there was something else now, a $300 charge at a high-end golf club. I didn't get angry. I got calculating. I opened my drawer, pulled out the receipts, literal and emotional, and started reviewing the damage. How many holidays had I paid for? How many emergencies had I covered? How many times had I been the family's invisible backbone while they posted gratitude to each other? I wasn't just ignored. I was exploited. And the worst part? They expected me to keep smiling while they danced on my generosity like it was a rug to wipe their shoes on. So I made a quiet decision. The days of free rides were over. They'd handed me a takeout menu. Now I was about to hand them the bill for everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow notepad and a black pen, the same kind my dad used to sign every birthday check he never sent me. And I wrote, not feelings, figures. Every loan, every dinner, every medical copay, every flight booked on my dime when they said, we'll pay you back next week. $312 for dad's prescriptions. $480 hotel suite for mom's Charleston birthday. $5,000 loan to Tyler. $1,800 for Christmas gifts when they forgot to shop. And so on. Line after line until the number at the bottom stared back at me like a final verdict. $16,940.23. And that didn't even include emotional damages, the kind that don't fit on paper. So, I did something I'd never done before. I sent a group email. Subject: Reimbursement Ledger plus Final Boundaries. Inside, I attached a PDF labeled Services Rendered. Vanessa Green. No greetings. No guilt. Just a letter. Dear family, this is a record of all financial contributions I've made over the past 5 years. Since it appears we are operating as separate parties, not family, I'm formally requesting repayment for these debts. I will no longer be contributing to family expenses, events, or emergencies. The card Dad used without permission has been closed. Legal notice pending if repayment isn't received within 30 days. Also, please do not contact me unless it is in regard to settling the balance. Best. Vanessa. I hit send. And just like that, I stopped asking to be loved. I started demanding to be respected. The phone calls came an hour later. Mom first. 5 missed calls. Then Tyler. A single text. Are you serious? Dead serious. Because what they didn't understand was this. When you treat someone like a utility, don't be shocked when they cut the power. I didn't send the invoice to be paid. I sent it so they could see, line by line, what it cost me to keep pretending I belonged. It was never about the money. It was about making them face the truth. That the daughter they once mocked for being too sensitive had finally run out of grace and inked the last page of the story they kept rewriting without her. By Monday morning, the silence had shifted. It wasn't just absence, it was pressure. A passive-aggressive storm cloud. Mom posted an Instagram story with the quote, "Real family forgives. Broken people keep score." And then she tagged my sister. Not me. Tyler finally called. His voice sounded half smug, half worried. "Vanessa, you're blowing this way out of proportion. You know we love you. Why turn this into a math problem?" I didn't flinch. "You're right," I said. "Let's keep it emotional then, and I'll send the lawyer my trauma diary instead of a ledger. Is that what you want?"
Click.
That was the last I heard from him. But the truth? It was already unraveling. Because my email hadn't just shocked them.
It exposed them.
My cousin Rachel, the only one who ever treated me like I mattered, texted me that night. "They're freaking out. Your mom said you're trying to destroy the family's reputation. Funny how they're more upset about appearances than what they actually did."
Exactly.
Because when your entire image is curated, the perfect family, the smart kids, the successful dinners, someone like me is a liability. I'd never fit their mold. Too outspoken. Too honest. Too unwilling to play the quiet background role.
But now?
Now they were scrambling to rewrite the story again. Only this time, I wasn't in it to play the fool. Later that week, I found out something that made my jaw clench. The family cruise I'd originally planned, the one I'd booked months in advance and paid deposits for, they were still going. They'd just removed me from the guest list and transferred the reservation to my sister's name. Same date, same ship, same itinerary. Like I never existed. And the kicker? They used my old travel agent and forgot to change the emergency contact info. So I got the updated itinerary email. And in that moment, I didn't get sad. I didn't get even. I got ready. Because if they wanted to erase me from their fairy tale, I'd gladly become the storm that washed the pages blank. The next chapter wouldn't be a revenge fantasy. It would be a reckoning. I didn't cancel the cruise. I could've. The entire reservation, from the stateroom upgrades to the private dining packages, was still under my travel agent's portal. But I didn't. Instead, I called Amanda, the agent I'd worked with for 5 years. I said, I need you to update the account notes, but don't cancel a thing. Just tag it as paid in full by Vanessa Green. Also, flag the room under Tyler Green for review. She paused. Is everything all right? It will be, I said. They're taking a cruise. I'm taking control. 2 days before departure, I booked a one-night suite at the port's luxury hotel. Floor-to-ceiling windows, spa access, the whole thing. I wanted peace, but I also wanted presence. The morning of the cruise, I sat in the hotel cafe sipping black coffee and watching passengers line up at the terminal. Then I saw them. Mom in a wide-brim hat. Dad with his golf duffel. Tyler in sunglasses like a discount celebrity. And my sister, strutting ahead like the ship owed her first-class entry. I waited until they reached the check-in counter. Waited until the staff asked for ID. Then it happened. The woman at the counter frowned, typed something, then called over her manager. She pointed to the screen. Sir, there seems to be a hold on your room. It says the cardholder requested review due to unauthorized reassignment. My father blinked.
What?
I don't even know what that means. The manager pulled up the file. This reservation was booked and fully paid for by Vanessa Green. It was recently modified without her authorization. Due to this, we'll need written confirmation from her to proceed. Mom's smile cracked. That's when I stood up from my cafe seat and walked slowly toward the check-in desk. Amanda had given me clearance to step in if needed. I stopped a few feet from them, calm, unbothered, glowing in sunlight. Mom's face went pale. Vanessa. Hi, I said. Just came to make sure everything goes smoothly. After all, it's a beautiful cruise I planned for a family that never planned to include me. Dad looked around, furious and embarrassed. Is this about money again? No, I said. It's about boundaries. I turned to the manager. They're no longer authorized to sail under my payment. Feel free to open the rooms to standby guests. The boarding passes were pulled. And just like that, the cruise left without them. But I went home floating because for the first time in years, I wasn't weighed down by the need to be wanted. 3 hours after the ship sailed without them, I turned off my phone. Not in anger.
In peace.
I lit a candle, made myself dinner, real dinner, not takeout handed with insult, and played music I loved. For once, the silence wasn't heavy. It was clean. But when I turned my phone back on the next morning, it was like stepping into a storm. 19 missed calls, 5 voicemails, 3 messages from unknown numbers, and 1 voicemail I replayed 3 times. It was Dad, the same man who once told me, "Don't get emotional, Vanessa. It makes you look weak." Now his voice cracked like dry wood. I don't know what's happening with you lately, but your mother's in tears. We just wanted a nice vacation. What you did was cruel. I hope you're happy. Happy?
No.
But I was clear. That was the difference. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer and began the process of formally separating every last financial tie, accounts, cosigns, the family trust one was supposed to manage one day. I wanted none of it, because they didn't want me. They wanted my silence, my wallet, my loyalty, without giving respect in return. 2 days later, I got a knock at the door. It was Rachel. She looked nervous, clutching a gift bag like it was a shield. I had no idea, Ness, she said. They told everyone you bailed on the family dinner, that you made a scene and stormed out. I laughed bitterly. Of course they did. She handed me the bag. Inside was a small box, a necklace, a tiny gold tag that read, "Seen." I know it doesn't fix anything, she said, but I see you. I always did. My throat tightened. Because that was the thing, wasn't it? Being unseen hurts more than being hated. I hugged her. The kind of hug that said thank you in 100 ways I couldn't speak out loud. Later that week, I saw a Facebook post from my mom. A photo of the empty cruise ship deck. Caption: "Sometimes life teaches you who your children really are." I didn't reply. Because she was right. Life had taught me who I was and who they were, too. And when someone finally sees you, you no longer crave attention from those who look through you. That was the real freedom. A month passed. No calls. No emails. Just digital silence and the occasional third-party guilt trip. My aunt tried reaching out, said mom was still heartbroken, that family always comes back around. But I didn't. Not this time. Because I wasn't circling back to a dinner table where I was always served scraps of dignity and asked to smile through it. Instead, I set my own table. On my birthday, I reserved a rooftop dinner, the same place I'd once begged them to celebrate with me years ago. They declined back then, said it was too much. So this time, I invited exactly 4 people. Rachel, my best friend from college, my former coworker who once lent me cab fare when my car declined.
And me.
That night, I wore the red silk dress they'd once mocked, said it made me look too loud. The waiter greeted me with a warm smile. "Happy birthday, Miss Green. Your table's ready, best view of the city." We laughed, toasted, shared stories. And I felt something I'd never felt sitting at their table.
Full.
Not just in belly, but in spirit. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Rachel leaned over and asked, "Do you ever think they'll come around? Apologize, I mean." I looked out across the city and thought for a moment. "No," I said, "because apologies require awareness. And they've spent their whole lives blinding themselves to who I am." She nodded. "Then what would you say if they did?" I sipped my wine, let the breeze kiss my skin, and smiled. "I'd say thank you. Because when you handed me that takeout menu, you gave me my freedom disguised as rejection." She laughed gently. "You always were the poetic one. But it wasn't poetry. It was fact. When you stop begging for crumbs, you learn how to bake your own feast. And when you walk away from a table that starved you, you create space for a life that feeds you." I no longer needed them to see me. I saw myself. And in that reflection, strong, steady, and finally at peace, I found everything they tried to deny me. Respect, clarity, power,
Love.
all mine now.